The 2000 film American Psycho has been talked about a lot, so much so that making any relevant and fresh additions to the discussion is harder than Patrick Bateman is for himself. But I would like to make an effort by analyzing a scene which, in comparison to two more famous and iconic moments in the film, is not recognized for just how brilliant it is. It comes near the end, where the film's main character, Patrick Bateman, returns to one of his crime scenes to find a rude surprise. But before discussing that, I will have to give some background. American Psycho revolves around the investment banker Patrick Bateman, who also moonlights as a serial killer. His main victims seem to be women, but in one notable and famous scene, he kills his rival, the fellow Wall Street exec, Paul Allen, right before he covers up his death and takes over the man's apartment. It is there that most of his victims seem to be brought and killed, as in a later moment when Bateman invites a sex worker and a friend of his to have a threesome. The sex worker runs away from him and sees the sheer amount of gore that her eventual murderer has collected there. This scene in particular establishes two important pieces of information for the later moment I'm going to talk about. One is the general look of the place, its grey walls, dark brown doors, and the collection of fancy furniture and artworks. Oh, and also the fact that there are cadavers behind multiple doors. Of note are also the bloodstains that line some of the walls. Because of this scene, we have a good idea of what to expect when, later on, Bateman returns there, which is why what comes after is so shocking, adding to the confusion that will be instilled in the audience as the scene goes along. Now, out of nowhere, the walls and doors have been painted white, the furniture and artworks absent. And when he goes to look for them, the bodies he had left there are gone. There's not even a drop of blood to be found. Instead, all he can see are three people having a conversation, one of whom we learn is a real estate agent later on, and the equipment the painters had left behind. All of this gives the scene this sense of unreality, which the filmmakers have played around with throughout the movie, such as the preceding scene where Bateman goes on a shooting spree, killing multiple people, including some police officers, managing even to somehow blow up a police car, which even he cannot believe, only for it to be unremarked upon. Bateman facing no consequences, even though there is no logical way he could get away with this. This sense of unreality is further enhanced when he talks to the real estate agent, who thinks he's a potential buyer until something about Bateman creeps her out, and she becomes unwelcoming and asks him to leave. This whole scene is a brilliant moment of subversion. Everything you expect to happen just doesn't, and instead you are left with a sense that you should question everything you have seen before. The filmmaking on display here is what really makes this scene. At the start, before he enters, Bateman puts on a face mask so as not to smell the rotting bodies, which primes the audience to expect a whole lot of gore, only to immediately hit us with his shot of the apartment hallway, which acts as a shocking sight as it is totally different than what we've seen of the apartment before. This shot is appropriately full-bodied, showing all of Bateman as he enters this strange environment, which works well for the intended effect, as it both shows enough of the space to establish that something is different, and also makes Bateman look smaller in the frame, thus making him seem less in control now. Further along, we get shots that mirror those from the previous scene, where the sex worker runs around the apartment and sees the gore that Bateman had left behind. Most importantly, this shot of a room where Bateman has graffitied "Die you yuppie scum" onto the wall, which has now been painted over, and also the shot of the closet, which was previously housing two plastic-wrapped bodies, but now only contains paint cans, rolls, and a ladder. The shot selection here serves to show Bateman's perspective, as when he looks at the real estate agent and her potential buyers, we are first shown him noticing them before a wide shot establishes what he is looking at. This happens again when he looks into the room and the closet, where the camera pans across both spaces, which makes it so that we are sharing in Bateman's confusion. After that, the real estate agent creeps in from behind like some kind of monster, startling Bateman. The camera work in this part also comes to show how she gains control of the situation. It begins at first with simple shot reverse shot before she tells him to leave, after which Bateman walks past her, decreasing his size in the frame as he takes on a meek posture, all while she maintains her place, which is continued in the next shot where Bateman exits the apartment and she walks into frame to take up most of the space there. Besides the camera work, this scene is also given an eerie atmosphere by the score, which is this low and ominous drone that sounds like the background noise of a nightmare. This atmosphere is then further enhanced by the look of the apartment. The film's director, Mary Harron, did kind of lament the fact that the place had been painted fully white on the commentary track, as he felt it might confuse some people as to where Bateman was because the apartment is so drastically different than in every other scene we see it in. But I feel the choice to paint the entirety of it white works so well that the scene would not be as effective had the paint job been different, as the stark and clinical look of the place is unnerving and almost surreal, and also because showing how Bateman's crimes have been covered up by having the crime scene literally whitewashed is just downright brilliant. But besides the filmmaking techniques, one reason as to why this is to me one of the most important scenes in all of American Psycho is because it brings one of its major themes to fruition. There are multiple ways to analyze American Psycho, maybe as a satire about the ridiculous masculine culture of Wall Street, or about the alienation that Bateman's lifestyle causes. But to me, one of the film's main themes is the abuses of powerful men and the absurdity of how much they can get away with. It doesn't take a close viewing of the movie to see that there's no way that Bateman could get away with his crimes, as he is so haphazard about covering them up that he could only truly do so in a world populated by complete idiots. The man just drags bodies in bags that don't even stop the blood from leaking out, leaving a clear trail from his apartment. And the private detective who is hired to find out what happened to Paul Allen, Kimball, played by Willem Dafoe, is kind of alluded to be aware of what Bateman had done, although Harron had directed him to give 3 different reactions to Bateman, one where he was unaware, another where he was not sure, and then one where he was sure that Bateman was a murderer. But I think his final line in the film is meant to give the sense that he knows.
I mean, to think that one of his friends killed him for no reason whatsoever would be too ridiculous. Isn't that right, Patrick?
It's like he's not even trying to hide how much he knows about Bateman's crimes. This all culminates in the main focus of this video, where we find that a whole apartment of evidence against Bateman has been washed away and painted over. There is one possible explanation for this, which is that most or all of the murders we have seen were nothing but Bateman's hallucinations. Harron has said, both on the film's commentary track and also in this interview with AV Club, that the true extent of Bateman's murders was meant to be vague enough for interpretation, and that some may have been imagined, stating, "We never thought that none of the murders happened. I don't think that everything happened, but that's for people to decide for themselves. I didn't write the book, so I feel like I was interpreting it as much as anyone else. If somebody says that it's all in his head and that makes the movie for them, that's fine." Certainly this scene is likely some kind of hallucination on Bateman's part, but then again, the absurd length a man is able to go without any consequences is a running gag and a part of the film's themes, so maybe it did. But for the purposes of this analysis, I think that the bodies that Bateman left in the apartment were real, and the murders we see happen there were as well, which means that someone saw the corpses and instead of alerting the police, decided to have it all covered up, most likely because a history of murder might drive down the place's value. I think the real estate agent is fully aware of what had happened there, and thus he was able to suss out that Bateman was responsible. But none of that is going to lead the law to Bateman, as the world of American Psycho is so screwed up that some people would rather cover up the crimes of a serial killer so as not to lose money on a real estate sale. Furthermore, what this all gets down to is the film's major theme, which is how men in powerful positions are able to get away with some of the most heinous crimes imaginable. In American Psycho, this is shown by having Bateman get away with comical amounts of murders, all while barely trying to cover them up. But it could be analyzed as an analogy for how, let's say, powerful men in the entertainment industry or other business sectors were and are able to get away with sex crimes, fraud, etc. Which is why, along with the genius directing, cinematography, and effective soundtrack, that I believe this to be one of the most horrifying and important scenes in American Psycho. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like and subscribe for more like it. And also maybe comment below about which scene in American Psycho is the most effective to you.